All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Nerve Guys podcast, where we discuss movement through the lens of the brain. My name's James. I'm going to be your host for today, and as always, this has been brought to you by the Neuroband, the wearable vision and balance training tool to help develop posture, focus, and coordination. Please check it out. We'll talk about that more at the end. Today, I've got one more story to tell people, so if you've been with me for the last couple weeks, I've kind of changed the tact a little bit from answering questions to just kind of sharing a couple of life stories. Remains to be seen which one people like the best, but I've got a few more questions in there, so we'll go back to those from next week onwards. This week, we're talking less about the physical stuff and more about, when it comes to movement, probably just your eyes. We're talking about reading. So I want to tell you one more time about another sort of ridiculous challenge that I embarked myself on, which was all about just seeing, like, how fast is it possible for me to read books. You've probably seen those memes that say, the average CEO reads 60 books a year. I'm somebody who doesn't like to just take that information and do nothing with it. My initial thought was like, that's impossible. And then my second thought was, I really want to try that. And I can't remember when I read it, but it was towards the end of a specific year. So I kind of gave myself the goal that starting next year, I want to set myself the target of reading 60 books. The challenge was, has to be reading with your eyes. Audiobooks not allowed. And I just wanted to see, CEOs are pretty busy people. So in theory, if that is true, they should be able to do it without taking up too much of their time. The first thing that I decided to get involved with then was, if I'm going to devote a whole year to reading, I might as well take the rest of this year devoting to speed reading. So got myself into like a load of different speed reading courses, found an Android app on my phone, which I actually recommend to loads of people when it comes to like vision training and cognitive training. I think the app's just called Speed Reading, but it's amazing. It does loads of cool things for your peripheral vision and for like general cognitive functions, stuff that I would usually do when I'm training athletes to be more aware on the field and things like that. And basically kind of just spent as much time as I could trying to learn all the principles of speed reading. So I'll share some of those now. Number one, if you want to be able to read fast, one of the most important things you got to do is work on your peripheral vision and actually expand your ability to focus on more than one word at a time. So a lot of text, when you see a word, you might read one word at a time, but a lot of the times 2 words are what encompass one actual topic. So adjectives are a good example. If you say that I'm wearing a red jumper, well, you could read red as one word and jumper as one word, but actually red jumper is one thing or one unit. So if you could just expand and widen your vision to read both of those things at once, actually now you can take in double the amount of information in the same amount of time. Another thing that's really useful and important for speed reading is being able to take the information in without like an internal monologue. So if you are speaking out loud, most of us learn to read by, speaking out loud, and then you just hear your own voice in your head reading the words out loud. If you want to learn to speed read, actually, you need to be able to get rid of that voice and just see the information as it is. So, you can visualize that information or you can do whatever you want with it, but you basically have to turn the voice off and get the information to present itself in a way that actually comes at you faster. Once I kind of had all that information, went into the task, and I think that year read like 53 books, and that's like 7 short of the target. Got really upset with myself and said, okay, cool. I know what I'm doing now. I'm going to smash it next year. The next year, I read 84, and that made me kind of annoyed that I didn't get to 100. So then I sort of went, okay, well, challenge for the next time was I'm going to read 100 books, and I'm going to allow audiobooks, and I'm going to allow like whatever, you know, I can use a Kindle, I can actually turn a page, I can listen, and I'll just see, can I actually hit the 100 mark? In that year, I ended up getting close to the 100 mark in about August, and worked out that if I could read 182 books, that would be the equivalent of a book every 2 days. And this was basically having like a Kindle book on the go, a paperback book on the go, and an audiobook on the go, and just constantly switching between them. And literally just trying to take in everything. Like, I wasn't allowed to put an audiobook on and not listen to it, but I maybe wasn't being so strict on trying to retain every single piece of information. By the end of the year, I think on New Year's Eve, I was on book number 182, and yeah, it was just like a frantic hurry to finish that, and yeah, kind of made the challenge. All of that wasn't a brag. What I wanted to do in this episode is share some of my experience about what is useful when we're reading, and how maybe we can change the way that we read to make it a little bit smarter. Because on my kind of endeavor to read a lot of books, the people who were talking about speed reading and making the most from your reading, it was always about taking in all of the information. It was like approaching it like you would approach school, where you say everything in the book is important, you're going to get tested on it after, and in order to be able to pass the test, you need to make sure you've retained a high enough percentage of this information to be able to recall it back. That's kind of the approach I was taking in the first 2 years when I was just trying to make it to that 60 mark. It was all about, read it, but make sure you got the information. Annoyingly, I don't know how many years, it's more than 5 or 6 years later now, maybe 8 years later, I can't remember the specifics information that I really tried to retain from those earlier years. And I really did try, all of the methods you hear from people like Jim Quick, that's, make it important, and make the visual images and things like that. I can't honestly say that while the stuff did seem to stick in the short term, the problem with make it important is if it doesn't stay important, you're still going to forget the information. And if you're going to forget the information eventually, unless you actually needed it for a test or something, I actually don't see the point in reading in a way that you retain all of the information that is presented to you. And that became really apparent in that third year when I was kind of just bombarding myself with information. I kind of already knew that there was no way that I was going to be able to recall all of this, but I still wanted the experience to be useful. Like, I still wanted to be able to say, hey, I read 182 books and I feel smarter for it, instead of, I just did this and I have no useful information. I haven't changed knowledge. I haven't changed perspective on life or anything like that. So basically, the thing that I kind of discovered was when you read a book, you're not reading information that's useful to you. You're reading the information that was useful to the person who wrote the book. Your experience means that you are necessarily going to have a different experience with the stuff that that person writes than they did when they're writing it. They're trying to write down everything they know, everything that is important to them, to share it with you. But unless you are that person's twin brother, that information isn't actually going to be relevant in a lot of situations. My personal opinion on when we read is we don't want to adopt the approach of like, I need to retain all this information so that I can carbon copy it and regurgitate it out. The reason that we read is to have an effect. Apologies. The reason that we read is to have an effect on our own life and our own experiences that helps like mold and shape them into something different. So that kind of became really apparent when I started just blasting information at myself. I stopped caring about like the specific details of what people were saying, and what became more important was every book just became, hey, I'm going to talk about this general thing, and then I'm going to just back it up for 200 pages. And what my brain started to do was, he said, okay, this book is about behavioral economics. And I go, oh, cool. All right, behavior. What do I know about behavior? My brain just started to become this little like pinball machine that bounced off all my ideas about behavior while I was thinking about it. And then as the person started talking, certain things that they would talk about would resonate with me, and then that would cause the pinball to bounce way harder and faster, and it goes, oh cool, this is something that I know about. I wonder, does this do X, Y, and Z? And if that's not where they went next, that thought would shut off, and then another one would open up. And I actually found, even though that third year I didn't retain anywhere near as much of the information, I can tell you the plots and the important points of most of the books that I read in that year, especially any of the kind of ones I was more interested in. If you show me that book again, even though I wasn't trying to retain the information, I'd be like, this was about, now I'm drawing a blank. So one of the ones I read towards the end, the passion paradox, the idea that when we're passionate about something, the more passionate we get, the more unhealthy it becomes, because we actually twist ourselves into being successful. So we're more prone to like cheat and manipulate and deceive in order to see success in that area, because the passion and the emotion is so strong for it. And what we actually want, if we want things to be healthier, is we need to let the passion die out, and we need to take a more logical approach. And you see that in big companies and things like that. When everybody is like one of those ambitious go-getters, those companies are usually the ones that end up committing fraud, because they have all these crazy high targets, and everybody feels like the end result really matters and shapes their reputation to everybody else as a person. If you can get more level-headed individuals in the mix, you actually can bring that effect down and help people to just be more kind of rational and less feeling like the end goal is all that you want. Another book was Range, which was all about the idea that, specific movements and learning deliberate skill sets. So, like if you're drilling all the basics the same way every time, might not actually be healthy for you. The better way to learn is through a wider variety of disciplines and experiences, because that helps shape your brain when it comes to being able to implement new information and integrate new things. So 2 examples there, now that I'm under pressure. But if I saw any of the other books, I can definitely give you like a pretty strong rundown of what the gist was without being able to recall the individual details. Whereas before, I would have been able to recall much more of the individual details, but probably the key core concepts of the book I might struggle with, because I wasn't allowing myself to like bounce those around with my own thoughts, my own principles, and my own beliefs. I was more saying whatever this person thinks is important instead of what I think is important. Now let's have more perspective thrown at me. So with that in mind, I kind of try to encourage people when it comes to reading, when it comes to like courses, you go for an anatomy course, or you go for a whatever neuroscience course, and you bring a notepad and you try to write down every single piece of information and then you get this thing of like, how am I going to remember all this? This person is so smart. That person isn't so smart. They're just bringing you into their world and showing you everything that they already do all the time. Your job is to come in with your own questions and then figure out which piece of information resonates with you the most and actually helps twist and shape your own life experience in the most immediate way. So like, which piece of information, there's one piece of information on that course or in that book that makes you go, oh yeah, that's what I've been missing all along. And then you go and rethink your whole life because of that one piece of information, instead of learning 40 pieces of information and have no idea what to do with it. So hope that made sense. Hope that was a little bit interesting. We're going to go back to like more questions and thoughts from the next couple of weeks. Feels a bit less patronizing, and I don't like talking too much about myself all the time. However, if you did find that interesting, I would absolutely recommend you go check out our Neuroband course. This is a wearable vision and balance training tool that I've developed to give you like an introduction to the nervous system. Again, it contains all the kind of basic exercises for your visual system, for your vestibular system, kind of builds them into a 12-minute workout to integrate all those things together. Take it, learn the drills, and then figure out how you can apply it to your own life. So we'll use some of the things we were talking about in this episode, try and take it and run with it. Yeah, that's basically all I got to say for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.